After careful thought and consideration, it's time to talk about the Alabama loss to Vanderbilt and the new era of football in Tuscaloosa. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Let's talk about the game first. Vanderbilt comes out, they score on a very good drive to start the game. Nothing really much to say there, but Alabama follows that up with a Jalen Milroe pick six off of a tip pass. Vanderbilt comes back out onto the field and scores a touchdown based off of two huge penalties against Alabama, which there was no rigging there. It was a face mask and two men on the field with the same number. Unacceptable, sloppy play. And then Alabama punts and Vanderbilt drives the field yet again and scores a field goal. It's 23-7. And Alabama closes out the half with a touchdown. And with that at half being 14-23, you think the nightmare's over. And the same kind of goes in the third quarter. At the end of the third quarter, I believe it was 28-30. Yeah, 28-30. So you're thinking, here comes Alabama in the fourth quarter. Their offense has looked fine outside of a pick six. Let's see what happens. The fourth quarter, there was no fluke. Vanderbilt outright won this game from Alabama. There was a strip sack there near the end on Jalen Milroe. Vanderbilt recovers, and Diego Pavia was amazing. Absolutely incredible. He made massive plays throughout the entire game, but the last two drives that Vanderbilt had is what sealed the deal. Alabama's defense looked lost, confused, out of place. There was no communication. There were tons of screaming and yelling and moving all over the field, but no one could guard anybody. The very last drive, Vanderbilt had the ball with a little more than 2 minutes left in the game, and they had to get 2 first downs to seal the deal. Everybody thought Alabama was going to be able to stop them. They had a couple of timeouts, the 2-minute warning, but they couldn't. Not only did Vanderbilt get 2 first downs, they got a third first down. They absolutely ran the ball down Alabama's throat. It was absolutely incredible to watch from an upset perspective. This is probably the biggest upset in Alabama history, right off of beating the number 1 team in the country. You show up to Nashville, Tennessee, a place that Nick Saban said was the easiest place in the SEC to play, and you get beat. Not by some fluke 13-17 game where the offense just looked completely discombobulated. 40. Vanderbilt hung up 40 points on the Alabama Crimson Tide, the number 1 team in the country. This, to me, is an obvious effort and preparation issue, and this hardly ever happened under Coach Nick Saban. I will say, like any coach, Nick Saban is not exempt from his team not showing up to play. However, it's very, very rare that happens, and it's even more rare that they actually lose the game. The games I can think about, the Texas A&M game and the Louisiana Monroe game. One of those happened in 2022. One of those happened in 2007. Or maybe it was 2021 and 2007. 14 years apart. So the expectation here is this is a one-off. And if it's not, there's a major culture issue. Now, I can understand losing to Tennessee in Neyland Stadium. I can understand losing to LSU in Death Valley. But to go to Vanderbilt and drop an egg like this, it's bad. It's really, really bad. The offense, just the team in general, there are 2 major issues. The offense is too explosive. There have been 32 scoring drives for Alabama this year. 31 of them have been under 5 minutes. And I think around 15 of them have been under 2 minutes. That is not enough time to give the defense the rest that it needs to go out onto the field and put out a performance like old Alabama defenses. I've seen things out on the internet that Alabama just doesn't have the talent that it used to. Absolutely untrue. There are tons and tons of players on this team worthy of going to the NFL eventually. Malachi Moore is one of them. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Deontay Lawson is another one of them. On the offensive side of the ball, Jalen Milroe is going to go. Ryan Williams in 2 or 3 years is going to go. There are tons more of these 5th, 6th round picks and undrafted free agents and whatnot, but Alabama has premium talent. If you look at Vanderbilt, there's probably not a player on Vanderbilt this year that would sniff a starting position at Alabama. And that's not to be critical of Vanderbilt. That's to give them props that they came out, they worked hard, they showed up, and they beat the number 1 team in the country. 0-60 was Vanderbilt versus top 5 teams. Not anymore. So the first problem is Alabama is too explosive. They're too unbelievably reliable on big plays. Ryan Williams has been a godsend, and without him, Alabama would be sitting at 3-2 right now. But sometimes he's too good. These 60, 70-yard touchdown passes aren't that great for the team overall. Now, they're phenomenal plays. They're incredible to watch, and every time he does it, I'm mind blown considering that he will not turn 18 years old until February. But like I said, it's too fast. The intermediate game hasn't worked all season. It didn't work versus Western Kentucky. It didn't work versus Wisconsin. It didn't work versus USF. And it damn sure didn't work versus Vanderbilt. It looked awful. There's no plays that I've seen Alabama run consistently where you hand the ball off to Justice Hayes or Jam Miller and expect to get 4 or 5 yards. No, it's either 2 yards or 60 yards. And while the 60 yards, like I said, is great, it doesn't help the team overall. The defense goes out and they're gassed. The entire second half of that game versus Vanderbilt, the defense looked gassed. And on top of that, they can't communicate. That's my second problem. There is too much sloppy play with the defense and special teams. Penalties, face masks, well, that's the same thing, but penalties, missed tackles, missed assignments, loafing around, unacceptable. In the last 6 quarters, Alabama's defense has given up 67 points and over 700 yards. Well, actually 60 points, counting the pick 6 that Jalen Milroe threw. 60 points and over 700 yards. Unheard of and unacceptable from an Alabama defense. Vanderbilt didn't do that great on 1st and 2nd down. 1st and 2nd down, they were averaging around 4 yards a play, which is still pretty good, but it's not near what they were getting on 3rd down. Vanderbilt was 12 of 18 on 3rd down. Alabama had 6 penalties for 57 yards. They're one of the most penalized teams in college football. To me, this shows that there is a disconnect between the coaching staff and the players on the field. They give up way too many big plays. Vanderbilt had 5 plays over 15 yards. A lot of those on 3rd and 4th down. Not great at all. Now I want to talk about what happened on the field at the end of the game. Malachi Moore, a team captain for this team, absolutely crashed out. Now, I don't know Malachi personally. I did go to high school with him for 1 year, and when I was at the University of Alabama as the sports editor for the school newspaper, I covered him in his freshman year and mentioned him multiple times in articles. Everything I've ever heard about this guy or talked to him directly a couple of times, I've seen nothing but good things. I've heard nothing but good things. Nick Saban, the saint of Alabama football, has said nothing but good things. And he named him a team captain last year. They've played golf together. Like, he stayed at their house. I don't know what happened. I do know that kind of behavior on the field is not the Alabama standard. It's not something that should be smiled upon. But to me, the shame and blame here is not towards him. Obviously, Malachi Moore, being the upstanding character guy that everybody says that he is, including the current coaching staff, Kalen DeBoer, Kane Womack, his DB's coach, all of the players on the team have said nothing but upright good things about Malachi Moore. So why is he crashing out? To me, this is a symptom of the problem and not the problem itself. He's an extremely experienced guy, and it seems that he's frustrated that the team or maybe the coaching staff is not being held to the Saban standard. That doesn't excuse his behavior. Kicking the ball, throwing a player into the dirt, throwing his mouthpiece, screaming, taking a substitute off the field when he doesn't want to come off. That kind of stuff cannot be tolerated over and over and over again. But to me, there are two potential causes for this. One, like I said, the team isn't living up to the Saban standard. Or two, there's a lot of change going on in the program, and him and other players are not a fan of it. To me, I think either way, something's got to change giving to the players. It's obvious that the new system isn't working. Georgia absolutely torched Alabama in the second half. Vanderbilt torched Alabama the entire game. USF had its moments. They scored 16 points, and it wasn't like they were scoring multiple touchdowns. They had multiple field goal drives. And while yes, Alabama was able to stop them, it's USF. Of course they're supposed to stop them. I can't get the image out of my head. And call me old-fashioned. I like to think I'm more of a progressive football fan, but Kalen DeBoer wearing a t-shirt on the sideline, most people think whatever. But to me, it matters. And I'm not really sure why it matters, because this sounds like I'm freaking 65 years old. I'm like, well, he's wearing a t-shirt. He shouldn't be doing that. That's not what head coach of Alabama does. But regardless, I think that it's a sign of a new era. It's a sign that things aren't going to be held to this strict, precise standard where, everybody walks in with a suit. Everybody's got to wear the same uniform with the same accessories and all this other stuff. It's more about individualism. It's more about players getting what they deserve, which is, NIL compensation and attention on social media. All of the hard work that they put in, they get that credit. I understand it, but there's got to be some kind of discipline, and there's got to be some kind of uniformity. And to me, a t-shirt does not reflect that at all from a head coach of a football team that's supposed to be the number one team in the country. All that being said, these things can be easily fixed. I think that Alabama's got to have a couple of get-right games. They have those opportunities before they head to Neyland Stadium. They've got to play South Carolina at home. I think that they will win that game. To me, this is a team that has a boom or bust potential. They can beat an Ohio State, a Texas, a Georgia on any given Saturday. But they can also roll out, sleep all week, and then drop the ball against a Vanderbilt, a South Carolina, any other team that you can name that's going less than 6-6. All that being said, Alabama's got to just fix these issues with communication and discipline. It's very easy to do. Nick Saban has done it over and over again. I think people forget when Georgia Southern ran through Alabama. Nick Saban has a great rant about that. They didn't lose to Georgia Southern, but they had like 300 yards of offense against one of the best defenses of all time. And then Alabama a few years ago was 10-10 against the Citadel. The Citadel at halftime under Nick Saban. It's not like Nick Saban teams were immune from falling asleep and not playing against lower competition. That happened. But by the end of those games, Alabama pulled it together and won. And I didn't see them do that versus Vanderbilt. I think their hole just got dug a little too deep. But once again, they can fix it. The last thing I want to talk about is the Alabama fans' criticism of Ryan Williams. There has been a fake TikTok page that's been started with old Ryan Williams TikTok videos being reposted with new captions under this week being like, oh, tough loss, but we're back, and he's doing a little dance. It's not real. Those are old videos. But even if it was real, we're criticizing a 17-year-old, somebody that should be in high school, somebody that's been the second best or maybe even the best player on this team. I want to go ahead and say this. Making or not making TikTok videos does not correlate to success. Either way, it doesn't freaking matter. It's a 60-second video that's not happening on the practice field, that's not happening in the meeting rooms. It's happening in the locker rooms where if he wasn't making a TikTok video, he'd be cutting it up with his teammates because that's what people do. I didn't play college football, but I did play high school football, and that's what everyone did in the locker room. Talking. No one was sitting in there devising the game plan. No one was sitting in there thinking, how can I get better? It was pranks, towel whips, jokes all the time. So the critics of Ryan Williams, regardless of what he ends up doing, need to stop. He's 17 years old. He is a minor, a kid, and he's tearing it up on the football field. If you're not satisfied with his play or with the culture at Alabama, maybe you should stop watching college football. And with all that being said, I'm going to close it out here. It's a new sheriff in town. There's a new era in Tuscaloosa. I think it'll work out, but this has got to be nipped in the bud pretty quickly. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time, probably after an Alabama victory on Saturday, where everybody's like, oh, I guess it's over. But thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.